I have a question for you. Hey,
Yes.
have you ever needed to hire a private investigator?
I know this has come as some great surprise to you, but strangely, no. No, I haven't. There is a detective agency in Kingston. I've driven past it many times. It's very near where my children go to school. I don't know how many mysterious murders happen on the cruel, rain-sodden streets of Kingston-on-Thames. Probably not many, I'm guessing. They're probably not fishing very many hoodlums out of the river there, just next to the John Lewis and the pub. So no, I never have. Have you? Have you ever gone to a detective agency?
I don't think I could find a private investigator because it seems like it would be a telephone number that's in the yellow pages or a phone book. No, I've never needed a private investigator, but there was great need, it seems to be, before the information age, right? Like the 1940s, all these films have private investigators, and
whereas these days we just have Google, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. And it's ironic because we have more crime and more evil doing, but we have fewer. Do they call them gumshoes also? There's so many names for the private investigators too.
Dick, that's one of the ones I never quite understood. Why is a private investigator called a dick?
Yes, I love it. Or a hired dick. I like it when they say hired dick. I don't know.
I burst into the office and said, I come to see the dick. Where is it? Two Real Cinema Club. I'm James Rosica.
And I'm Andres Lorente. Every week on the Two Real Cinema Club, we investigate films. And this week we're looking into two films that probably need further investigation, but also that are about investigators themselves. We looked at 2025's Honey Don't, and we're comparing that to The Big Sleep from 1940-something, 46 or
44, I think it was made, and then finally kind of released to the general public in 46. Yeah. So I'm not sure what number you put on that. Yeah. So this is so Honey Don't's one of the Coen brothers films without one of the Coen brothers, isn't it? So it's an Ethan Coen.
They're doing
made
that
without his brother Joel. Do you like the Coen brothers?
Yeah, I like a number of their films, yes, but it's been a long time since I think they had full juice. I think something's happening.
I love the way. If you told an investigator, I like a number of their films, I can imagine the investigator saying, "Oh, yeah, but what's the number? Is it 1? Is that 0? That's also a number."
No, 0's a placeholder.
Oh, we're going to get philosophical now.
Not quite a number.
Honey Don't is notable, I think, because it's one of those rare films that contains its own review in the name. I can't claim that joke. That's stolen from the UK film critic Mark Kermode, but it's a good gag.
Perfect.
It's worth stealing.
Perfect. Yeah, I think Mark Kermode's probably quite a fan of the earlier work of the Coen brothers, so that's saying a lot by saying almost nothing. But I think he's spot on, but we don't want to give away too much about our opinions.
Giving away too much. Solve the mystery before the films even began. So Honey Don't, released this year. Apparently it had a 6-minute standing ovation at Cannes, where it was released this year, which just goes to show that they will clap anything at Cannes.
Or put a French character in your film at any time possible. Yeah.
Written and directed by Ethan Coen, also co-written by Tricia Cook, who I think is Ethan Coen's wife. Mm-hmm. Kind of a family affair. Margaret Qualley appears yet again. She's turning into a very in-demand star. Aubrey Plaza is in it. Chris Evans is in it. Charlie Day is in it. Reasonable cast. Not shot for an enormous amount of money, I would suspect. If I had to give this film a label, I wrote this at the bottom of my notes after watching it. This is a sun-bleached noir.
Ooh.
If such a thing is possible.
Did you invent that phrase? That's fantastic.
I just made that up. That's not bad. I think it's supposed to be a noir picture, but you know what? It's pretty sunny.
Yeah.
There's not much cloud or rain.
No.
Well, shall I tell you the story of the film that got the 6-minute ovation at Cannes?
Ooh, if I can bear it, yes, please.
So, Honey Don't is a detective picture, a sun-bleached neo-noir dark comedy. I think that's the box I put it in.
Yeah.
In Bakersfield, California, In the present day, a woman called Mia Novotny is found dead in a crashed car. In the days before her death, Mia had arranged an appointment to see Honey O'Donoghue, a no-nonsense, tough-talking local private investigator, played by Margaret Qualley. Coincidence? Maybe. But the local police, led by Charlie Day's Mitakowicz, are largely uninterested, so Honey decides to delve into the case a little further. And she finds that the woman's death may have something to do with the local church of the Four-Way Temple and its rather dodgy leader, the Reverend Drew Devlin, played by Chris Evans. Will a murder by the local drug gang get connected to the accident? Will police officer M.G. Falcone, played by Aubrey Plaza, join forces with Honey, either on the case or in the bedroom?
Ooh.
And will the mystery be solved before Honey's niece Corinne gets involved?
Ooh. Wow. Now you've made me want to see the picture.
Sounds exciting now.
Yeah, I wish I'd heard that before going in.
So this film, and it's worth saying it is mercifully short. It's under an hour and a half, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Just under, yeah.
This is the second of a trilogy, supposedly.
What?
Supposedly, Ethan Coen and Tricia Cook, they are making a lesbian B-movie trilogy.
Oh.
The first one was Drive Away Dolls. Didn't see that. But it was also another role for Margaret Qualley.
Oh.
I think. So when I went to see this film, not many people in. When the lights came up, I was the last person in the theatre, in fact. I don't know whether other people had left halfway through, either in boredom or disgust, or whether they just made a sharp exit before the credits rolled. Overall, bit disappointing. But before we ring the spoiler bell, how did you find it?
Well, I think my experience was not much different in terms of the audience. I think there were 6 or 7, but 4 of them were myself, my wife, and my in-laws, who sat right behind me. These are octogenarian in-laws who sat right behind me. And there are some risque scenes and some violence. And I was shocked to walk up to the cinema and see that they were waiting outside, because I was going to see it with my wife. And then she suggested that they go too. And she had seen the trailer, but hadn't seen maybe how bad the trailer was. So I told them before we went in, I said, there's a better film tonight at the old 16 millimeter run. You know, it was Kiss Me Madly, or Kiss Me Lovely. It's another Philip Marlowe film, actually. It's from the 50s. And they elected to go to the one that they had just walked to. They'd made the effort, and they wanted to see their daughter. So I tried to tell them not to go, and then afterwards they did ask my wife to filter her film suggestions a bit more carefully.
So, but you already told them the answer, and yet they didn't listen to you.
I know. Well, octogenarians, they'll do whatever they want to do, right?
By the time we get to that age, you're right. You and I will do whatever we want to do as well. You're right. You're right.
But similarly, by the end of the film, I looked around and no one else was in there. So they either got out very quickly or they had left before, which is, as you said, under an hour and a half. Anyone can sit through an hour and a half film, I think. So.
Yeah, most people's bladder can last an hour and a half. Yeah. So I think if there is one word to describe where I think this film slightly falls down, it reminds me a little bit of Great British Bake Off. Do you get that in the States?
Oh my God, I love that film. Yeah, that series, yes. I see every time I go to the dentist, they show that to me.
Oh, yes. What, to persuade you to eat fewer sweets and cakes, yes. And I feel like they should have taken this movie, like balanced the reels on a tray and taken them up to Paul Hollywood at the front of the kitchen, and he would sniff it and chew it a little bit and say, "This is underbaked." Because I think this film is broadly, I think the two problems with it are that it is miscast and underbaked.
Yeah.
And those two together, make it a little bit difficult to enjoy. I mean, I think the elements are in place. I mean, I like Margaret Qualley. I like Aubrey Plaza.
Yeah.
I like Chris Evans.
Yeah.
And they sort of have the most of the elements in place. There are murders and there are kind of incompetent cops, and there's a dodgy church, and there's a bit of sexy stuff, and there's no reason why it couldn't be tremendously entertaining. but it really feels like it needs another 4 or 5 cracks at the story.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
And I hate to say this, maybe another 30 minutes of screen time as well. Because, I think most of the characters feel a little bit out of place. The performances feel a bit stagey, and the story is kind of half finished and kind of truncated.
Yeah.
So, the film's not very good, but it's 70% of the way there. What a difference that last 30% might have made.
Well, a 70 for us in school right now is a barely passing grade. 69 is failing. So, yeah, I think I guess it barely passes. I think you're right about it could be longer. I always hate saying that, but it could be longer if they were actually to tell the story that they begin to tell. Or explore the story, or explore any of the characters a little bit more. But all of that is just tossed into the wind, and it ends up being very messy and kind of dispersed all around, both in characters and in story lines, I think.
And kind of strangely truncated at the end. It's really it kind of reads a little bit like one of those films that ran out of money suddenly, and they had to wrap it up quick in 2 days, so they just did.
Yeah.
There's one other thing I'll say before we ring the spoiler bell, and then we'll spoil away, which is I came out of this film and I was just imagining going into the pitch meeting and imagining kind of Coen and Cook saying, look, what we want to do, we want to make we're going to remake The Big Sleep, but we're going to do it as a lesbian detective film. And kind of working title, or whoever is putting up the money, they say, okay, that sounds interesting, but you know what? We can't afford Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall to be in this movie. So instead, Coen and Cook say, well, that's fine. What we'll do is we'll just have Lauren Bacall, and we'll give her all the Humphrey Bogart parts. Because I think Margaret Qualley's character, Honey, in this movie, well, clearly I think is trying to be a Lauren Bacall character. She has like the 40s dresses. Yeah. She has the hair, like the voice that she's doing. I think she's really trying to emulate Lauren Bacall's kind of like deep, husky, sexy voice. Yeah. She's trying to do kind of all of that, trying to be Lauren Bacall. But the character she's playing is sort of Philip Marlowe, isn't it?
Yes.
That she is being the tough private investigator. She is the one who is beating people up and smashing guns and fighting for her life. And much though I like Margaret Qualley, I'm not sure that she's quite the right person to be doing that role. In fact, Aubrey Plaza actually probably could have done it quite well. Yeah. She looks like she'd be able to hold herself in a fight. Whereas, if Margaret Qualley was the one defending me in a scrap outside a bar, I think I might be looking for a different second.
Yeah.
Not to diss her. Yeah, she's a good actor. Well done. But I think this isn't quite the right thing for her.
It does, yeah. It does play a little against type, I suppose. You don't think of her as being the hard-edged detective type. She's more elegant, I guess. I mean, she's dressed very elegantly. There's a lot of clothing in this.
She changes clothes a lot, doesn't she? She does change clothes a lot.
Yeah.
And then, and I sort of prepared to accept her as a sort of, as a private detective if she wasn't attempting to be tough, but instead she was clever. But I think part of the problem is that she does very little investigating and very little detecting in the film. Yeah,
well, it's interesting because she doesn't have to do much investigating, I don't think. It's like the whole story is in front of us very early on. And then, so there's not a whole lot of investigating to do as far as I can tell. It's more about investigating her own, I don't know, sexual life and...
Yeah, she does a reasonable amount of that.
Yeah. And and just getting some driving time in and making sure that we know what her license plate says. I think those things seem to be more important than anything else. It's like, oh, she's a private eye. She's a private eye. She's a private. We get that again and again. But you're right. We don't see her doing a whole lot of private eye stuff. And in fact, there's one scene where I don't want to give away too much, but someone gets shot just kind of off. She doesn't see it, and then she also sort of doesn't really pursue that either when that principal character gets murdered. So. It's a lot of her electing not to do much investigation, which is, again, playing against the genre a little bit. But maybe we should spoil the film.
Yeah, let's ring the spoiler bell, and then we'll kind of spoil away. So I'm trying to think of some clever kind of private detective metaphor for ringing the spoiler bell, and I can't think of one. So I'm just going to smash this bit of metal. Here we go.
Ring the doorbell. You ring the big mansion doorbell or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Dong. Right. So let's spoil away. You are exactly right that towards the end of the film, so a major character, Chris Evans, kind of gets shot Off screen, we never see him again.
Yeah.
Honey hears the shot and then kind of does sort of nothing about it, except she like mentions it in passing to the police chief, who sort of ignores it and says that he doesn't think it's important. It's a very strange way to arrange the climax. I can understand how maybe if it's intended to be a joke and it's sort of supposed to be an anticlimax, and maybe the intention was that you would watch the film believing that you were building to one kind of denouement, in fact, and then you pull the rug and actually we're getting something different. But instead, the film ends up being a little bit of a sort of damp squib.
I think you just said damp squid.
That I would pay to see. If there was a giant squid in the third act, then yes, that would be a surprise and a thrill.
Yeah, that's good for me because I don't like squid. Find the taste and the texture unappetizing. And then, to have it damp. I mean, I guess it's damp anyway, but it's best deep fried, which is sort of like totally dried out and crispy. Right,
crispy. That's how we like them. Ooh. So, like about Honey being like a detective who doesn't do much detecting. I mean, what she does is it turns out she manages to sleep with the killer several times without realizing that this person is the killer. And then kind of towards the end of the movie, she's searching for her missing niece. She goes to her lover's house because she hasn't heard from her for a while. And then when she gets there, the door is open and she figures out by looking at her lover's high school yearbook that she must be the killer, maybe. Something's a bit weird. And then the killer just confesses absolutely everything to her. I mean, she sort of barely puts two and two together. And then, this woman who is the suspect, whatever, kind of, she murders her before she gets a chance to put the cuffs on her or anything like that. She never finds the missing girl. It's just like a little bit of lucky coincidence that she happens to be in the house. And then there is this sort of sophisticated French murderer.
Yeah.
Who is sort of hanging around town, and she kind of catches Honey's eye a few times, and she never gets found out. She gets away with all of her crimes. And then, like at the very end of the movie, instead of there being some kind of big cynical reveal that, the killer is still on the loose, we're left with this little scene at the very end of the movie where Honey sort of propositions her instead because she looks good on a moped. I just don't understand how all the elements are supposed to fit together. It seems like a little bit of a random jumble.
Yes. And so much of what I thought the interest was going to be was it looks like it's drug running. The church is doing some drug running. And also sort of has this, this ability to control its congregants. And it's kind of a sex church, too. I mean, there's some interesting things there that get a little bit of play, but not too much investigation. And again, I think that would be interesting for us to find out via Honey's, investigations, her looking into the matter. But we are not given any of that. So it ends up being kind of goofy. We sort of open and close with that, mysterious, very sexy French woman, wears all leopard skin clothing. She also has lots of different clothing, but leopard skin patterned everything, underwear, socks, shoes, pants, shirt. And we see it all being taken off and put back on. And, she's mysteriously investing in this or checking out this car accident that gets the story going, the inciting incident, and then she reappears at the end, and this looks like it's going to be Honey's next romantic foray as well. And no one ever really suffers any consequences of killing someone or selling drugs to someone, or the law is very unapparent in this film. Which is convenient. We always talk about that. It's kind of convenient when you have bumbling people, bumbling lawmen, bumbling antagonists. But as a result, it's a very light film, super light. So I love the fact that you call it sun-drenched noir. I think that's good. Because it doesn't feel very noir-y, because none of the characters can really be taken seriously at all.
Yeah. And you're exactly right. There is a lot of sex in it, with, interestingly, I would say pretty much the same satin sheets that we saw the other week in War of the Roses.
Yes.
I wonder whether the wardrobe department just has like one set of satin sheets that always come out for these sex scenes. They put them through the laundry.
I feel like that's, isn't that Tricia Clark's previous credits on films is I think she's an art director. So you'd think that she would have made really, I should look that up just to make sure, but you would think that she has some hand in that, or certainly some influence on on a fairly small film. What was the budget on this film? Do we know?
I looked it up and I cannot find it. I can find the box office. Apparently, it's made $6.3 million at the time of recording. Doesn't look like it was made for a lot of money, and I'm guessing these are some fairly big stars who are working for scale because it looks like a fun little project.
Yeah, I stand corrected. Mostly editorial department stuff.
Okay.
Which also, this film, it's so short, could have used more to edit, perhaps. I don't know.
Need more material.
Yeah,
I wonder if you come to this from being an editor. You are so sick of cutting things out that you tend to write things very, very tight and sparse because you think, I can already tell in my head that the editor is going to cut this out and that out and that out. So we just won't write it. We'll keep it really tight and small, and then you end up with just not quite enough material.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to the sex thing because
please.
I mean, there are some interesting inversions in this film. It is kind of fun to see a lesbian main character, and they don't shy away from showing some fairly sexy stuff. Though, curiously, I would say that Chris Evans is probably intended to be the eye candy in this film. He probably spends more time with his clothes off than any of the other characters. The camera is presented as rather enjoying looking at his body as he kind of gets dressed and undressed. But then there are some scenes where I felt like the film sort of looked like a throwback to some sort of early 2000s late night cable channel sort of adult softcore movie. There's like a scene early on, the opening image is of the sky, and then this sort of sophisticated French assassin walks into frame, and she comes and has a look at this car which has been flipped over. And I was guessing when I watched this, this film trying to tell you, here is a film which is going to flip all your preconceptions upside down. That's sort of what they're trying to aim for. But the scene that follows that immediately is just a film where the woman is the assassin, takes off all her clothes and goes for a swim in some shallow water, and then we get to enjoy watching her put her clothes back on very slowly. And I really can't think of any reason for her. It's not like she's covered in blood or dirt, or there seems to be no reason for her to take her clothes off, except if this was back in the 1970s, then they would insist on filming that scene so that they could put it in the trailer and get everybody into the cinema. It really felt like that sort of 1970s exploitation mentality. I wasn't entirely sure what it was doing in a film in 2025.
And that brings me to the question of, is this intentionally a B film? And I think it's almost advertised that way. I don't know. Some of the films of like Roger Corman come to mind. These very cheap films that got a lot of people's careers started, but were I don't know how well developed they were or how quickly they were shot. But he was just cranking out films that would definitely make money because they were inexpensive, but they weren't necessarily great stories or never made an epic, for example. And it fits kind of uncomfortably between an intentional B film and an exploitation film. And it is very odd because there's the what is it, the Sam, how do you pronounce his name, Mankowitz or Medakowicz? He's this other cop who's always asking Honey to go out on a date, and she says again and again, I don't like men, or does she say I like women? But I mean, she makes this point again and again, but it does, it's interesting. It's kind of a feminist thing in the sense that he's suggesting that, oh no, she's beautiful, she's smart, she's a PI, she couldn't possibly be a lesbian, and yet, she has to tell him again and again, yes, I am. I don't like men. I told you I don't like men. So it does, it lives in this kind of strange world where it's a little bit woke, let's say, or a little bit enlightened. Yet at the same time, you're right, it's got sexploitation moments, and it seems like it's not intended to be a good film, which is just, it really puzzles me that why would Ethan Coen set out to make 3 not good films? I mean, you're even announcing it. We're going to make 3 B movies.
I mean, I wonder whether it gives you a little insight into what the Coen brothers do when they work together. Yeah. I having watched this, I strongly suspect that Ethan Coen is the one who chooses where to put the camera. Because I think there's a lot of appealing, enjoyable shots here. I think it is well shot on a very low budget. I think he knows how to tell a story with a camera. Yeah. And I'm suspecting that Joel Coen is the one who comes up with the characters because the characters feel very thin in this film. It's kind of a nicely shot, fairly low budget film with very thin characters.
Yeah. I think actually it was the opposite.
Oh, really?
Well, I feel like I read that because I think eventually they started sharing credits, but I think it used to be that Ethan Coen took the writing credit and Joel Coen took the directing credit.
Oh.
But I'm not sure. I got to go look back at some of those credits. That was the impression I had. But I think the bottom line is I think they're better together than they are alone. I saw his Joel Coen did Macbeth a couple years ago with Denzel Washington, which is perfectly good. But it's funny because he goes for, the Coen films are pretty well stylized. There's some shots and some looks that you expect, and he plays completely against that, as if he wanted to say goodbye to Coen Brothers films by doing Shakespeare and doing it black and white and doing it super sort of an impressionistic kind of thing. So I think it's the opposite, but we'll have to look into that. But obviously they each had roles, and they probably each made one another's work better in the heyday. Right. Yep. Yeah. Could we go back to the sex just quickly? Yeah. Oh, yes, please. Yeah. There was one there. The first time that MG and Honey kind of get together, it happens. They're in a police bar, right? A cop bar where all these cops are hanging out. And it's just so unbelievable because there's a lot of, what do you call it? Digital sex, a hand sex, right there at the bar. I think MG is the one who has her hand into Honey's private parts. And it's just, they are talking, there's a dialogue going on, but they're basically having sex right there at the bar. And there's a lot of sex in this film. And that, again, kind of makes it a little uncomfortable to watch in front of your in-laws, but... Literally in front of them, yes. For me, I was studying. This is my job. I was taking notes. I wasn't enjoying these scenes or anything like that. And then they do have sex, and then there's a great character, but there's a lot of that. There are a lot of just like sort of unnecessary, gratuitous sex scenes that I don't know that they give a lot of character detail. But the morning after, there's this wonderful scene where Honey she looks like she's doing the dishes, right? But she's actually cleaning all of her sex toys and very carefully cleaning her anal beads. And it's just, that was a character detail I kind of liked. So that was clever. This film is not without its clever moments, but it doesn't string them all together in a particularly engaging story. I wrote so many things about, at one point I wrote so bad about this film. I said, you don't have a story yet. These are... Qualley in clothes was one of my notes. Is because you do, although you basically see her naked a lot, you also see her in a number of different fantastic outfits. But it doesn't tell the story. But there are character detail moments, so it's not without a couple of good moments. This kind of reminds me of my 70% comment, because I feel like we're kind of almost... at the point of saying something interesting with this film. Yep. The idea about, we have some prominent, lesbian characters, and no one kind of particularly makes a judgment about that. They're presented just as who they are. The camera is at least as interested in the naked men as it is in the naked women. Yeah. That and this idea that there is a sort of quasi-religious cult. Yeah. Which is involved with sort of, violence. And I feel like, a film about that sort of thing should feel more timely and relevant than it does. This film, it happens in the present day, but if you told me, it happens in 1972, I would sort of also believe you. Yeah. It doesn't really feel like it's a film that is trying to reflect what is happening today, even though it's got the material to do it right there. Yeah. Yep. It feels like it just needed someone to come in and say, well, look, why don't you join that to this? Yeah. And then, let's drill a bit deeper into the cult, and let's try and have an exciting climax and get her to do a little bit more investigating. Why don't you prove to me that she is clever by putting two and two together, which is, the classic thing that when we talk about The Big Sleep, we'll talk about this more, that there is some entertainment to be had from seeing a film about a detective who is cleverer than anybody else on screen. Mm-hmm. You get to enjoy, them solving the puzzle. That's where some of the appeal comes from. And yet, nobody in this film feels like they are cleverer than we in the audience. And so it ends up being kind of disappointing. Oh, yeah. They almost had it there. There's one other thing, which is also kind of very disappointing, that Honey has this assistant who seems kind of, quite sassy and quite sort of switched on. And she keeps making these comments about, why don't you let me make you an Excel spreadsheet instead of having a Rolodex? Yeah. You don't need to be so retro. But... this kind of assistant character, again, she feels completely wasted, because she's clearly clever and sassy, maybe the cleverest, sassiest person on screen. Yeah. But she also seems to be behaving like it's her first week at work. And when I felt like this assistant, she's bright, she should be part of the team. Yeah.
she shouldn't be holding a revolver or sort of bailing Honey out of a problem, but she should be on the case, and she should have the numbers that Honey needs before Honey realizes she needs them, or she should be helping her put two and two together, or observing this or that, or just kind of slotting into the team and the puzzle. Whereas instead she feels like a little bit like a character who's wandered in from the wrong film and is loudly complaining about it. Couldn't we enjoy two professional women who know each other and lean into each other's quirks and sort of feed each other and help solve the mystery? That could have been great fun.
Yeah.
But instead, it's another mess.
Agreed. Yeah, I think there are actually a lot of characters that are just underused. So, the remedy is either go with fewer characters and really use them, or just eliminate them, right? I mean, if they don't have a great use, and I think for me, the telling thing is at one point that secretary just wants to make her coffee, right? Because Honey goes out and buys her coffee all the time. I could make you a cup of coffee, which is again, it sort of plays against the sexual liberation motif that's here as well, or the equal rights kind of piece, like the women rising to the job of a private investigator. I don't know that I've seen another film with a private investigator as a woman as the main character. So that film with the woman private investigator could be great fun. Yeah. I
would love to see some great women private investigator films, but I can't think of any.
Yeah.
We're not doing it, and it's not this.
No, it's not. And the thing about this is also that I think it's supposed to be more funny than I found it. And I think a lot of it plays on just caricatures, though, which I think weakens everything. Like the cop is a bumbling idiot. The pastor is basically a bumbling idiot, and that I think you're absolutely right. That congregation, that whole church element could be great. It could be very critical of today's world, I think, but they just underplay it and they don't even tell us what's going on. It's clearly the French. There's a French group, French Connection, I guess, that's using the church to move drugs. I don't know that makes a whole lot of sense to me, but they never really explain it other than he's hooked up with the French woman in some way. And then she ends up shooting him, and that doesn't really turn into anything either. So it's, I think very little is done with any of these elements. And then you've got all these other bumbling people around the church cutting drug deals or going off and killing people. And there's pretty high body count in this film, and it ends up with a little higher body count after that. But it doesn't seem like for any good reason people are going down. And I think that just cheapens everything. So it just becomes a very simplistic kind of exploitation film of I guess, rote characters. We don't really need to know much about them. There are a lot of them. Some of them are doing bad. Very few of them are doing good things. And it's just caricaturish by the end of it, which is disappointing because I think the Coens have some great characters. They've written some great characters over the years. And here they just got too many characters, and they're hard to take any of them seriously. I guess that's the bottom line.
I feel like we've seen quite a few of these nominally comedic films that aren't funny recently. It seems to be like the new trend. I feel like we've seen quite a lot of comedies that we haven't laughed at.
Yes.
I mean, even like The Roses the other week, but then that David Fincher film, The Killer, which I think is probably a comedy, but I didn't laugh. I mean, is that what comedy has become, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, laughing is so 20th century.
That's a bad sign if the comedies are not fun or funny anymore.
The film happens in Bakersfield, California, which I'm completely unfamiliar with. I was assuming that it was like a tiny little town with maybe kind of 20,000 people in it, something like that. So I looked it up. No, 500,000 people live in Bakersfield, California, apparently.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty big place. It's not what I was expecting. I did enjoy some of like the atmosphere of the scene setting with the really washed out small town feel of this place, which looks like it's in terrible economic decline. People living in trailers. All the signs on the shops are all kind of old.
Yeah.
The buses are clunky and the streets are ill maintained, and it feels like that's another invitation to some kind of satire, and yet none of it is really kind of taken advantage of. It sets up a lot of interesting things and then utterly fails to pay them off. I wonder whether when they wrote this film, they did 8 drafts and then somebody's printer broke and they had to just use draft number 2 on set because no one was able to print off any of the later drafts.
Yeah.
That's just sort of what it feels like. I don't know. It would be very interesting to find out the story of how this film ended up being the way that it is.
I think they probably should have stayed with the draft called Honey, Please, Honey, Don't. That would have been like, just don't make the film. Maybe that was a good draft.
Just maybe go back and think again. Just think a bit harder. Go on.
It's funny because there is a lot of attention spent on setting up that atmosphere of Southern California and even the automobile culture. How many times do we see that license plate that says what? I don't. Honey D, whatever it says. So I think they're trying to get away with just working the atmosphere. I think it's a style film, really. I mean, I think maybe it was just an exercise in doing something stylistically un-Coen-like, I guess.
Whether it's Ethan Coen's pitching to do ads, because that's where the money is these days.
Could be, because think of all the shots of businesses and their signs. Aren't the and the credits? That's the whole credit sequence takes a long time because they give every person above the line basically a storefront credit humps, like their signs.
Yes, it'll kind of photoshopped a name above every.
It's a long credit sequence.
It is. Although I quite enjoyed it because I quite like the music. But yeah. I tell you, if Bakersfield has got 500,000 people in it, then they seem to have a very, very small police department. If anything, a city with a police with a population that size ought to have at least 5 or 6 separate members of the Cliche Squad.
Cliche Squad.
Good point there.
I wrote down, there are kind of a bunch of cliches in this. I mean, I sort of feel like sort of man out of time, or in this case, woman out of time, with the 1940s dresses and the Rolodex. And I feel like, if we haven't seen a woman be a private detective, we have seen a private detective be a man out of time before. And when I was watching that, I was thinking, that's all kind of cute, but the fact that she has a Rolodex is a little bit like seeing The Big Sleep and Humphrey Bogart being in Los Angeles, where people are driving around and shooting guns, and he's insisting on riding a horse and shooting a bow and arrow. It's like why are you out of time? But anyway, the other cliches that I wrote down, one of the earliest shots, a trail of underwear that the camera follows leading to the bed. That's how kind of honey is introduced. And I feel like we have seen that in a lot of things before.
Yes.
And the idea that all French women, they all have dark hair and straight bobs. That's the one that you can identify a French woman at a distance of 100 meters. Yep. She's got a bob, must be French. and then the fact that all murderers, they always leave their front door unlocked, and their family photos in high school yearbooks out for everybody to see, just so the detective can pick up the necessary clues in the 30 seconds that they're not in the room.
That was very good. Oof, and it basically allows Honey to solve the whole investigation in a couple of minutes without doing any of the build-up work. Yeah.
Yes.
That's a funny twist, because isn't it that in MG's high school yearbook, I think there's a verse from scripture or something like that. But, for a film that sort of is designed, I think, or a series of films maybe, to empower women, it's the MG character who blames the victims, right? That's the...
right, yeah, yeah.
I guess it makes sense. Maybe that's the evil person is the one who's blaming the victims, but ultimately, this former partner of Honey, and they seem to really like each other a lot, ends up being... this woman who also abducts her niece somehow, right? I don't think we talked about that much.
Yes.
Because she was a victim, because she was getting beat up by her boyfriend a little bit. And those are some dangerous cliches, I suppose, to get into. The French, for me, the French hottie, I think that's kind of it goes back to the assassin, like this French hottie assassin. But the reason that's obviously just a broad cliche, but also it's just that she's the only French character we see. She represents the French. And we think they're supplying them with drugs or something, supplying the church with drugs, and the church is distributing the drugs. Still a little unclear to me, but, that I think that with this other cliche, it's getting into these dangerous sort of ethnic cliches. I think because for me there's a minor character named Hector who's like a teenage drug mule basically. And I don't think he's like a major player, but he's just delivering some drugs to some guy one night in a parking lot. And then when we see his home life, and sadly his grandmother gets murdered as a collateral damage when the pastor sends out someone to take him out because he's accidentally killed one of their clients, I guess. I felt like I was in Bolivia for a moment. It just seemed like this very tropey Latin household, complete with the blankets and the black the bowler caps and all that. I was like, oh God, this is painting a very broad picture of South America. So I think it's interesting because they do go to these kind of these old tropes, I guess, these old kind of cliches that are now considered probably too broad. So cliches are all around, I guess, in this film, and it sort of works on these old character types and these old plot types. So it's not surprising that there's some cliches that the whole story rests upon.
The whole thing feels like a bunch of very talented people got together, probably had a reasonably enjoyable time, but just haven't quite managed to draw all the threads together.
Yeah.
So it's kind of feels like a big missed opportunity. It's a shame it's not a million miles away from being a really great piece of work.
Yeah, I think it's got the bones.
But that last 30% is what makes the difference, isn't it?
It's funny though too, because that's why I was thinking about the budget, because you do have some pretty big names there and some high-priced actors. So I don't know if they were doing it at much lower rates, or maybe this film did cost quite a bit of money, and I don't know how much it's going to bring in. Oof.
I feel like if they'd spent more money on it, they would have concentrated a little bit harder. I don't know. I wonder whether Chris Evans these days probably doesn't need any more money and enjoys accepting non-Captain America roles, just for the pleasure and to expand his range. His character in this film is very similar to his character in Knives Out. I don't know whether you've seen that.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of asshole that Chris Evans, I think, quite enjoys playing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I wish he were more. I couldn't take him seriously as an asshole in this film. That was the problem. Is that he seems very likable and bumbling, and I think someone has to be properly evil in the film, and I don't think anyone. Well, MJ's character was, I guess, but only at the very end. The surprise kind of evil.
There's this one thing that Chris Evans says to one of his henchmen, like about halfway through the film. He's kind of annoyed with the henchman who's bumbling, and he tells him, "Know who you are." And I feel like that should be like what they wrote, on the front page of the script before they approved this particular draft. It's like, know who you are, know what it is that you're trying to aim for.
According to IMDb, $20 million estimated budget, and then gross U.S. and Canada is $5 million. Worldwide, $6 million, which I think includes U.S. and Canada, right?
Yep. Worldwide would be everything all together.
Well, it made about $30 or $40 when we saw it, so by mistake, at least 10 of those, 15 of those were. I think the in-laws got the senior citizen rate, so it was probably.
I hope by the time you get to 80, you get some kind of discount.
Yeah,
surely,
especially if it's a matinee.
Right. Well, should we have a break? We'll wash our anal beads off, stretch our legs, and then come back and talk about another detective picture, also kind of mold breaking in a different way. We'll come back and we'll talk about The Big Sleep. And we are back with what is, by definition, I think, the favourite film of anaesthetist all around the world. We have watched The Big Sleep. I only thought of that this week, but it's so obvious. The gag's right there. It's right there.
It is right there. And it's a good gag.
1946, Howard Hawks. Have you seen this before?
Yes, I think twice before, but it has been a long time since I saw it, probably 20 years or more.
Yeah, I think I've seen it at least twice, maybe 3 times actually. I bought a whole bunch of secondhand DVDs last year because I was thinking, we were going away on holiday to somewhere that didn't have any internet, but they had a DVD player. I was thinking, great, I'll entertain the children with some great classic old movies. It'll be a great education for them. And then as soon as we arrived, my daughter announced that she hates black and white films, so we didn't really end up watching almost any of them.
Oh, man.
But it does mean I still have the DVD, so
good.
It sits proudly on my shelf and got an airing this week.
Seems rather disappointing to just dismiss all films because they're black and white. I think a lot of people do that, but
it's just interesting. I think it wasn't the lack of color, but it's the way that people talk in old films. I think really puts her off. And in a way, I can sort of see what she means. I mean, I think I probably saw this film first when I was probably around her age, but it was only would have been sort of 40 years old at that point, whereas this film is 80 years old now, and that's quite a difference.
It is a big difference. And you being an anesthetist, chose this film, I believe. Is that why? Because you think it's a favorite of anesthetists worldwide, or what?
Do you have any other questions for me, counsel?
It's part of the final anaesthetic exam, actually. I suggested this pairing before I'd even seen the trailer for Honey Don't.
Okay.
Largely just because I love the film. So it's always a good excuse to have, it's good to have an excuse to watch it again. But I do think, having seen them both, that Honey Don't does draw from this film in a kind of slightly roundabout way. I think they do match together, but it's things like its costume, its body language, it's those detective-y tropes. And then your Margaret Qualley's vocal tics, I think.
Yeah.
I think she spends most of Honey Don't trying to impersonate that sort of husky Lauren Bacall voice. It seems to me that The Big Sleep was one of the films that they would have all watched.
Oh, definitely.
When preparing to film Honey Don't.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we'll talk about this later maybe, but the Coens definitely have watched this film again and again, I think.
Yes.
Together and alone, I'm sure. Oh, shall I tell you the story? Do you want to get it? Wait. Is there a Two Real Cinema Club book club review?
I did read the book this week. Yeah, I did. And I think it's maybe the third, maybe the fourth time I've read the book, actually. I'm not sure. I was trying to think back. I'm not sure if there's ever been a book I've read 4 times. That wasn't like a textbook or something that I was forced to read for kind of school or college or something. So I think I've read it for the 4th time this week, and still really enjoy it. I will talk a little bit about the book later on. This film is a reasonably faithful adaptation of the book, actually. There are a few notable differences, which we'll probably talk about. But, generally, the characters, most of the events, some of the dialogue, all lifted straight from the book. The book is dynamite. The book has got some great dialogue in it. Why wouldn't you use it?
Well, speaking of DVDs, I tried to get the DVD at the library. Couldn't. Although the later version with Robert Mitchum was there. But I did get the book. I've only read the first 20 or 30 pages, but boy, the opening of the film feels a lot like that. So you don't have another full-fledged member of the book club here, but you've got someone who's trying his very best in a trying time.
Do you want to tell us the story then of the first 20 pages?
Yes, actually, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a very minimal opening here. We should know that it's directed by the great Howard Hawks, based on the book, of course, by
from 1939. I think the book came out.
Yeah. And then, the script is credited to William Faulkner, Lee Brackett, and Jules Furman.
Incredible group of script writers. I mean, just incredible.
Yeah. And I've always wondered what, again, because I've read the first 20 pages of the book, it's very, very familiar, very similar to the opening of the movie as well. And I always wonder about what did William Faulkner do on these scripts? Because he's such a great writer, but he's known as certainly a novelist much more than a screenwriter. But I think he also did To Have and Have Not. So he seems to have some credits on some of the Bogart and Bacall films, and I'd like to think that's due to a lot of his talent, but I'm not sure.
I did read the relevant chapter from Hawks on Hawks by Joseph McBride, which is like it's a book of interviews with Howard Hawks where he just talks about his career. And a lot of it, admittedly, is fairly self-aggrandizing, but it's interesting, the story about this film, that apparently To Have and Have Not had sort of been a bit of a hit. Yeah. Warner Brothers were very keen to team Bogart and Bacall back up again. Yeah. So that was their first performance together. And Hawks had personally acquired the rights to The Big Sleep. So he'd pay for it out of his own money. And I think so. He worked with William Faulkner before, but needed someone to do another draft. And he hired Lee Brackett through an agent. And he thought she was a man. When he gave them the gig. Oh, yeah. So he didn't realise that she was a woman. Apparently, she turned in her draft in 8 days. And she was very, very good with the dialogue. This is what he says.
Yeah.
And then I think Jules Furthman, then he did the rewrites later. So I think they shot the film in 1944.
Yeah.
Came up with a perfectly presentable version, but Warner's wanted more Bogart and Bacall.
Yeah.
So then Jules Furthman wrote some fairly random scenes just for the two of them, and they went back and they shot that just with the two of them playing
really?
around, basically, and inserted that. And then they took out some less important but still significant story scenes, which is part of the reason why a lot of the story in the film doesn't quite make sense.
Doesn't quite make sense, and it kind of also explains why there might be too much Bogart and Bacall. I don't know. Humphrey Bogart is the famous Philip Marlowe, the Raymond Chandler character. Seamus, hired Dick, private detective Gumshoe, and it opens on him answering the call, literally by ringing the bell to Sternwood Mansion, where this sort of, he's sort of an invalid General Sternwood sits in his greenhouse, his hothouse, in a wheelchair. He needs desperately Marlowe to investigate the lives of his troubled daughters, Vivian and Carmen, who seem to be wrapped up in gambling or drugs or a little bit of both. And they're also looking for a missing man and a woman, or two, maybe two men, two women, lots of missing people. In the process, Marlowe sort of gets dragged into the L.A. gambling and criminal underworld. It's a milieu he knows well, and one that knows him well as well. Oh, that's a lot of well. It's sort of a land of clunky and chunky old cars and men with long coats and hats, and again, some well-dressed people in this film as well. And long drives into canyons where there are gambling houses in what looks like the middle of suburbia. Maybe this is Burbank too, but I think most of it's West Hollywood. So he's looking for a man. Will he get his man, or a man, or men, and other men and women by the end? Will he kill a number of other men in the process? Will Miss Vivian Rutledge and Marlowe be in love by the very end of this film? Or are they already in love as actors and as characters?
Ah.
I don't know. She's much younger than Bogart. I think he says in the film.
She was like 19, I think, when they made To Have and Have Not, and Bogart was like 44 or something like that, I think. And
I think they play in this film, it looks like I think he announces that his age is 38 or 30. I think it was 33 in the book, 38 in the film. And then she still looks like she's maybe 23, 24, something like that. So they are a great pairing.
People grew up quicker then. But I mean, they really are a great pairing.
Yeah.
Spoiler. I don't know whether you can you spoil a 80-year-old film? I don't know.
No, we've tried it in the past, and it's just impossible.
It's impossible. But I like my main sort of my main takeaway from this film. I mean, I love this film. I find it very complicated. I've seen it 4 times now. I've read the book at least 3 times. Maybe I read the book 4 times. Still find it pretty confusing. Even the people who made the film found it confusing. Yeah. There is this famous story, isn't there, that they were kind of halfway through shooting, and I think Bogart asked Hawks, but then who did kill the chauffeur? And Hawks said, well, I don't know. And they phoned up Raymond Chandler and asked him, and Chandler said, I don't know. Like, nobody really knew what was going on, even the people making the film. But the thing I most take away from it is this, I think, is one of the most sexually charged films I have ever seen, I think.
Yes.
And every time I was like, I forget every time I see it again. I just keep thinking about it. Oh my God, everyone in this film is so beautiful. It's like, this film really reminds me of a word that my mother would often use.
Yeah.
Where every woman in this film is a knockout.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, obviously Lauren Bacall, is one of the most magnetic film personalities of all time. She's so watchable. She's so beautiful. But, every other woman, the librarian at the start of the film, the women who work in the bookshops, like the younger sister, when she first turns up, she's like the first woman who appears in the film, and she's wearing short shorts, which are so short. She is more or less naked, isn't she? Even the taxi driver Is absolutely
right, yeah.
drop dead gorgeous. Absolutely, all of the women incredibly beautiful in this film. And Bogart as well.
Yeah.
He's kind of he's like a bit of a grizzled old figure, but he's tremendously seductive and attractive. Everybody in this film is just so sexy.
Yes.
And it's great fun to see a film where there's there is an awful lot less skin on show than there is in Honey Don't, and yet I think it's sexually much more alluring. It still gives me a little bit of a frisson, I think.
Yeah. And I think in the dialogue, too. Obviously, there's some very risque conversations. And I think, that's the film. Yeah, I still don't really know what it's about. But I know that it's just about a very cool story world and really cool characters. And they talk fast and they say funny things and witty things. At the drop of a hat, they don't even need to think about a funny line. It's there, and it's directed that way too. Obviously, it's written that way, but it's directed that way too. That they're all smart and kind of have just a dark side. I mean, this is classic noir, I guess. I mean, and it's very well done. But yeah, you've got to follow characters like this. The Sean Regan character, and then Eddie Mars's wife disappears, and then she appears towards the end, and then this Geiger guy. We never really talked to Geiger, and then he's kind of he's really the first death that kicks it all off. And then it looks like the younger sister Carmen is on drugs in one scene, and maybe there are drugs involved, but then we never really see any of that. And then all of a sudden people are gambling, and we're going to gambling houses, and there's a lot going on that it's really quite hard to follow. I agree with the guy who wrote it, that it's hard to follow. You don't know what anyone's doing. But we know that there's investigation going on, and he's at least trying to investigate, I think. And he seems to be... It might be just the way that Bogart plays it, but he seems to know what's going on, even if no one else does. And we know that he's got an angle and he's going to figure something out. But it does come down to another film with a fairly significant body count. And
I think, at least 7 murders, I think, in this film. Yeah, a lot of people get murdered. But I agree, that's one of the big key differences between this and Honey Don't, which is that even though I don't understand it, I am convinced that Humphrey Bogart does.
Yes. Yep.
So I'm prepared to put my faith in him.
Yeah. Every time he touches his ear like that, he's yanking on his earlobe, and you're thinking, okay, that's a sign that he's putting it all together and he knows. But he can't tell anyone else because he needs to be the one to figure it all out, and he's smarter than they are anyway. So it's lush. It looks beautiful, great black and white. It even has this interesting, we've talked about the bookend moments a lot, like in the credits. It's basically just the two of them smoking in silhouette, I guess. And then their cigarettes come together in an ashtray. Everything's sexual in here, isn't it? And then at the end, it ends kind of on a similar image, but instead of being in silhouette, they're very much framed in good light on the front. And then, it's on the implication that they'll be together as a couple. She's been married, 3 times already in her early 20s, something like that. And then Humphrey Bogart, as far as we know, I don't think he ever married, did he? I think he's a confirmed bachelor, I believe. So you get the bookended image of them being in the dark together and then finally in the light together. Lovely touch with the smoke and cigarettes just hanging out in the ashtray together. And I think that's basically what the film's about. We just need to see Bogart and Bacall together.
Yeah, being cool, being well-dressed.
Yeah, being sexy, being funny. Yep.
He and she are like the proxy lovers of the audience.
Yeah.
That we are enjoying their sexy, flirty behavior because we feel it like it belongs to us.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk even more about sex because I did come away from this film thinking, is this? I mean, there's a lot of sex stuff in this film which is disguised, and it's either coded in such a way that it's a nod to those in the audience, or it's hampered by the Hays Code, because in the book there's a lot more fairly straightforward, sexy, racy stuff. That most of the scenes that Carmen is in, when Marlowe finds Carmen at Geiger's house and they've been taking photographs of her, she is completely naked. When she sneaks into his apartment, she is lying in his bed completely naked, and she takes off the covers and says, "Look at me."
Yeah.
And it's fairly clear that she has been, they are taking pornographic pictures of her, and Geiger's bookstore. It's like a sort of a smut store that he is lending out sort of erotic books to people. And, there's a lot more drug consumption. It's all very much more out in the open, whereas it has to be hinted at.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether not everybody who watches the film entirely gets the hints. There is also, Geiger is gay, and I don't know whether that is, clear in the film. It probably isn't. I think homosexuality was one of the prohibited sort of traits that the Hays Code was trying to eliminate from the screen. Also, when Marlowe goes to the casino, I think there is a brief glimpse of a couple who look to me like a lesbian couple at the casino as well. Like two women who are, I think, maybe walking hand in hand away from the camera. I think there's just like all these very little subtle underplayed hints about a much more sort of liberated, sexualized, racy world, which the film, suggests, but also acknowledges that it can't really show you any details of. That all kind of adds into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And the fact that everybody in the film seems to be tremendously up for it. Like the woman in the bookshop.
Yeah.
As soon as Humphrey Bogart turns up, she's quite happy to turn the sign, turn the sign to closed and pull the shades down and say, "Well, we got a couple of hours to kill.
Yeah.
What do you think, honey?"
Lets her hair down, takes off her glasses, pours some whiskey or whatever.
Even the woman who is the taxi driver, she gives him his card. And she's got this great single joke where she says, "Oh, shall I call you in the day or night?" And said, "Oh, better to call me at night because I work in the day."
Yeah.
And it's just great. It's so much kind of flirty, racy sort of fun.
Yeah.
And I find all of that a lot more exciting than when it's kind of bouncing butts and anal beads in the sink. But maybe that's just me being tremendously old-fashioned.
Well, this is an old-fashioned film. They were just more subtle back then, yeah.
We are sort of duty-bound to talk about the writing of the film, and there are three great writers, and then Howard Hawks did some writing on his own. In fact, there are 5 great writers on this film, because so much of it is taken from Raymond Chandler's book as well. But one of the things it made me think of is, I don't know whether you ever read that Robert McKee book, Story, which all kind of aspiring screenwriters were reading about 20 years ago.
Yes, I did. I don't remember much of it. It's a big book, and I remember feeling forced to, especially after, is it adaptation that sort of features that?
Oh, yes. Yeah. There's this one thing that kind of McKee bangs on about. And I'm not sure that it's that good a book, but there are some interesting ideas in it. And the thing that he bangs on about it is that he feels that every story, every scene should contain a reversal.
Yeah.
So, every scene, to justify its existence, you need to have the characters in a different place at the end of the scene to where they were at the start of the scene.
Yeah.
You can't just carry on in the same direction. If you're going to make a scene, you need to have a change of direction in it. And this film, it really shows off that ethos tremendously well. There are all sorts of great scenes where, Bogart and Bacall, they will start off at loggerheads,
yes,
and then end up romantically involved by the end of the scene, or they will start out being romantic and flirty and then end up at loggerheads at the end of the scene.
Yeah.
And there's this constant reversal. None of it is wasted. All of it, is doing something. It's very skillfully written. And you're right, there is a lot of dialogue. It's a very, very talky film.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of talking. But they all talk quick, so it doesn't slow the film down.
Yeah.
And I think it really works. So I think there's a lot to be learned from the writing on this film. And it's not a surprise because the writers on this film were outstanding, world-class writers.
Yeah, it's surprising that it's almost 2 hours considering how fast people talk in this film. I would almost recommend that this one could be a little tighter and a little shorter, and the other film could have been longer if it had been.
Weird, we never say that.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, there's this weird thing with the Big Sleep seems to end at about 1 hour 15, when they have that scene where Bogart and Bacall are talking about horse racing or whatever, and she gives him the check and she says, "Oh, it's a job well done. Here's $500.
Yes.
Dad says, thanks for all your hard work." And it's like they're trying to wrap it up.
Yeah.
And then it swings into the third act where the stakes get raised. But it would be possible to more or less end the film at that 1 hour 15 mark.
Sure. Yeah.
And yet then they flip it round and send it off in another direction. And it's not like the film has some unfinished business, which it then finishes. Because by the time we get to the end of the film, there's still unfinished business.
That's right.
There are still hoodlums around town, and there is still corruption, and there is still evil and still bad people. But there's a little bit more of the story, which can be sort of teased out.
I think it's like a new murder, a new little wrinkle that continues the story into a longer third act. That we're going back to the same places. You go back to the Geiger house, and And you go back to some characters that we visited earlier, and I guess it ends up being like it's really Eddie Mars who's the worst of the bunch, and he's the guy who's behind all the disappearances and all that. But there's sort of this long, almost rote scene where Bogart gets beat up a little bit, and then he gets sort of kidnapped, and then for some reason, like Lauren Bacall moves quickly in this film, and if you've ever driven around Los Angeles, I mean, probably less traffic in those days, but all of a sudden she's at the house where Eddie Mars's wife is, and they're all kind of holed up together, and I'm not really sure if Lauren Bacall was there, or I guess I should call her Vivian Rutledge was there, of her own accord, or if she was sort of kidnapped there too, but she helps him get the ropes off, and it's really easy for him to escape, and it's just kind of this very, very classic scene that I think we've seen a million times, and it's very easy to get away, and then and it propels the story a little bit farther. But at that point, you're right. I think, a lot of the secrets that can be revealed are already revealed. We kind of know what's going on, but the film moves along just the same. Like, there's new murder and new mystery to explore. So I think, this one could be like 15 minutes shorter, and then the other one could be about 15 minutes longer. But we'll go into that in the synthesis, I suppose.
There's it's probably worth talking about the book at this point.
Yeah.
Insofar as that, like, I've already said the film largely does stay fairly faithful to the book, but with just a few small but significant changes. I think probably the most significant change in the book is that in the book, Vivian, so Lauren Bacall's character, is Vivian Regan, or Reagan, or whatever. She's married to the missing man. So in the film, she's Mrs. Rutledge, and who knows what happened to her husband. Whereas in the book, she is the wife of the missing man, and so I think that puts a completely different perspective on things, because in the book, if Marlowe finds Reagan, I guess it is, then that sort of means that he will necessarily then lose Vivian.
Yes.
So that kind of adds a completely different dimension to it, which is interesting. In the book, Marlowe, I think he finds Vivian sexy, but he prefers Eddie Mars's wife.
Oh,
she is the one that he is really thinking about at the end of the movie. So in that scene where he goes to the house and he finds Eddie Mars's wife. In the book, Vivian's not there at all, and it's Eddie Mars's wife who then cuts off the ropes, and she's the one who helps him escape, and then she's the one who is kind of led out of the house at gunpoint. And she says, "There he is behind the wheel," and lets Marlowe escape. And Marlowe has a real soft spot for Eddie Mars's wife, whereas he feels that Vivian is a little bit too corrupt, I think, probably. So it is a kind of a big change. And I think, clearly Warner's just wanted to get Lauren Bacall shoehorned into as many scenes as possible.
Yeah. So
there is no reason for her to be in that house. It makes no sense. It's not logical. You don't understand how she could have driven there so quick.
Yes.
And yet, it's an opportunity for her to do some of that business, which actually Eddie Mars's wife should be doing, so that you can have a bit more Bogart and Bacall. So that's largely the way that the film has been rewritten. The end of the film is very different from the book as well, insofar as, in the film, they go back to Geiger's house and they come up with this scheme to trick Eddie Mars and he gets shot. Whereas in the book, none of that happens. Instead, Marlowe just goes to see the general, and then Carmen sort of grabs him and says, "Oh, why don't you teach me how to shoot? Because I'd like to know how to use my gun." And so Marlowe takes her off to some unused bit of the estate, and then Carmen tries to shoot him.
Oh God! Oh, that's good.
And he's the one who then figures out, oh, she must have killed Reagan.
Okay.
And Vivian is the one who confessed, yes, my sister killed my husband. We buried him on the out in the oil fields behind the estate.
Oh wow!
He is sleeping the big sleep back there.
That's good.
So I mean, this is where the name, the scene where the title of the novel comes from, has been completely omitted from the film. So it's a very different and bit of a downbeat ending. Whereas this ending where they defeat Eddie Mars, and then the two of them are together waiting for the police to come and sort it all out. It's a much more upbeat ending. So it changes the tone of the story quite a lot.
And I mean, from what I've read, the opening 20 pages read very much like the opening 5 or 10 minutes of the film.
Oh yes. I mean, a lot of the dialogue is lifted straight from the book, because it's great, cracking dialogue. Why not?
Yeah, and then, but you don't get that background at all. I mean, in the book, you're seeing their oil wells down below, and they may not be running the way they used to, but that's what made them very rich and made Sternwood Mansion what it is. And you don't really see much of the grounds. You don't see much of other than the hothouse and a couple cursory scenes at the beginning. That's not much of a character. That house, the estate, their standing in the community is not that much of the story.
Yep.
So I'm excited to read the book. Continue with the book because it's led me there, I think. And I think I could see how Marla would have, Raymond Chandler must have had some good things that just couldn't make it into the book. But from what I've read so far, it feels very familiar, probably because I've seen the film now 3 times. And
the book feels a lot like the film, but sort of played back at half speed.
Okay.
So that there's more dialogue and more description.
And then so Lauren Bacall in 2 films just jumps into these moments where she's singing with a group of people and happens into Have and Have Not. I think Hoagie Carmichael's band is in the bar downstairs where they're hanging out, and all of a sudden she's singing with the band again and again. And then in this film, she's at the gambling house. Eddie Mars is very suburban-looking gambling house in Laurel. A lot of this happens in Laurel Canyon, I guess. And then all of a sudden she's singing, and we've seen her somewhere else. Well, like an hour before, she's with Bogart in another nightclub, having a drink and getting into an argument. It just goes on and on. But I mean, are scenes like that in the book? Does she jump into song like that?
She does not. Okay. No, that would be great, wouldn't it? She wears a lot fewer clothes, I think, in the book. But Marla spends a lot of time thinking about her legs, I think. But but she does not sing a little ditty off the cuff at a casino. Yeah. She's a kind of a harder, less sympathetic character. I think she's kind of less funny and more bitter in the book. I do come away from this film thinking it's a film made in the 1940s. It would be a mistake to expect any people of colour in it. Although there are no people of colour, I think. The book does refer to one of the characters as being brown. Oh. And I wonder whether there may be a Latino character in the book. In fact, you might be able to tell me more about that after you've finished it. Yeah. Whether you feel that one of the characters in the book is Latino. He probably is. Yeah. I think in fact he's called Camino, I think. So he probably is Mexican. But I wonder do you think this film counts as a little bit of a miniature feminist film?
For the 1940s, yeah, probably.
Because many of the women are sort of shakers and movers.
Yeah,
the women are kind of propelling the plot forward, and it was shot while the Second World War was still going, which is why I think there are a lot of women who are working in shops or being cab drivers, or I think women are doing a lot of these jobs because the men are all out in the South Pacific at war. So as a result, I think you come away from this film feeling like this is a world where women, A, do a lot of the work, and B, are fairly forceful about, or at least fairly forward about what they want and what they're prepared to do to get it. Yeah. So it's interesting to see a film where it's women propositioning Marlowe, much more commonly than Marlowe is propositioning women. Yeah, that
sexual advocacy definitely wouldn't be common, I don't think, in the 1940s. I didn't live in the 1940s, but I doubt it. And then, a thrice divorced woman at that point, or I guess maybe one of the husbands just disappeared. Anyway, a woman who would be married and divorced a few times. I think that was actually quite rare, too. I think people were generally encouraged. Women were encouraged to stay in marriages, even if they weren't good ones. Or even, just the advances of... the Carmen character, I suspect she's like very late teens or early 20s, but to be that forward at that age, I think that was probably quite risque for the time. So it does have a bit more advocacy for women, I think, than other films of that era.
I think the women at least are not treated like objects to be rescued or sort of traded.
No.
They do have a bit of agency largely, I think. Yeah. So, maybe we can get away with sort of giving it a little bit of a feminist dusting. Well, you alluded to this a minute ago. We should do a synthesis. Yeah. Try and bring these two films together. And they've got quite a bit in common. But before we do that, as always, I'm going to force you to play my favourite game. Let's play Who Am I?
Who am I?
Well, considering I don't even know who so many of the characters are. Never see Sean Reagan. Barely see
We don't.
Mona Mars. They talk about a bunch of characters that maybe I would be more like them, but I don't know what they were like. This is purely aspirational. I think I just want to be Bogart. I think I've wanted to be Bogart for a long, long time. It's a stretch, but I'm the hired dick. I'm the Seamus, the gumshoe. I think I want to be Philip Marlowe.
I think my answer is exactly the same. That I wrote here, in my fantasy life, I am Humphrey Bogart. In real life, not so much. But I agree. Actually, it's probably more accurately, I am, in my fantasy life, Philip Marlowe. He's one of my absolute favourite characters in all of fiction. He's so cool, and he's so witty, but he's kind of self-deprecating, and he's full of sort of contradictory influences. And he's kind of very flawed, and he has this kind of drinking problem, and he's lonely and pretty downbeat a lot of the time, but he has this absolute moral authority, and he's cleverer than anybody else in the books. He's just a great character. Who would not want to be Philip Marlowe? And he's also 6'3", I think. So that's another reason why I quite like to be Philip Marlowe, and never will be. So I think that just shows that's the film working as intended. I think if you don't come out of this movie wishing that you were Humphrey Bogart, then you just weren't paying attention. Because, I wonder. I don't know whether women come out of the movie wishing that they were Lauren Bacall. You could do a lot worse.
Yes, wow.
Kind of great wardrobe, beautiful house, great singing voice, very funny. And a tough broad.
Yep.
I think I suspect a lot of women I know wouldn't mind in their mind being a bit more like Lauren Bacall.
Yeah, she's great, and she's still so young. I should go back and try and calculate how old she was in this film, but I don't think she was more than 25 or 26.
I think she may have been 20. I think I'm going to look it up.
In terms of the height, I just realized I always thought Humphrey Bogart was a little shorter than I am, but he's exactly my height, 5 feet 8 inches. And it's great. I think that's the joke that in the very first scene, the Carmen character's talking about how he's tall, right?
Right, yes.
And I think in the film, I think he says, "No, I'm not that tall," or I don't try to be. I forget his response, but it's very clever. And then I think in the first pages of the book, when I read it, it's actually the opposite, that he is tall. So I think Chandler envisioned him as tall, but to get Humphrey Bogart, you knew that you were getting a 5 foot 8 inch tall, average height guy.
Right.
I actually feel like that might be an overestimation. I think he's probably a little shorter than that, but I
did have a look at his shoes during a couple of scenes, and I wonder whether he may be wearing lifts. It's possible. I've just looked up Lauren Bacall. So the Big Sleep was shot between October 1944 to January 45, and she had her 20th birthday in September 44.
Oh my God.
So she was 1 month after her 20th birthday when they shot The Big Sleep.
Wow.
People grew up fast then, didn't they?
And were they were already romantically involved by that?
They were, I think. So yes, she was 19 when they shot To Have and Have Not, and sort of connected.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That's incredible. And when was he born? How old? He died in late 50s, I think. So they weren't together that long, because I don't think he was alive too long after that.
Yeah, let's have a look. So he was born in 1899. So he would have been 44, when they met.
Wow.
And he died at the age of 57.
Yeah.
But he did smoke a lot of cigarettes, so...
Yeah, esophageal cancer, made a lot of films, and then died young, yeah. What a character.
Oh, shucks.
Whew.
Well, let's...
I prefer to be the living Humphrey Bogart, not the dead guy with the esophageal cancer.
Right, let's play the jingle, and we'll see whether we can bring these two films together.
Well, boy, I think they're very similar. I think, as we said, the Coen brothers would have seen The Big Sleep for sure, and I think they've they've made some good noir films. I mean, I think we could have paired, and I think mentioned this before we started recording. The Big Lebowski to me feels very Big Sleepish. A little bit, some changes in terms of getting the whole. It's just like a Shaggy Dog thing, I guess. Getting the whole story going where it's Lebowski's young wife who they're looking for instead of a daughter that's getting him into trouble. Los Angeles, it's just like the whole LA scene, feels very contrarian and different because the dude is the investigator. He's the Philip Marlowe type character, and just not Marlowe-like at all, but that's kind of a great Lebowski twist, I think. But I also think that they did noir really well. If you think of something like even Miller's Crossing or Barton
Blood
Fink.
Simple, I suppose, is noir, isn't it?
Yeah. I think there's other noir films. What's the one that toyed with Billy Bob Thornton was The Man Who Wasn't There or something like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Feels very noir. So, I mean, I think they do noir really well. So it's not surprising that he tried to take some of those qualities of a noir film and put them into the modern day. It doesn't come out nearly as well. I don't think it's as good a film, but he's got the fast-talking investigators. I think, like, the Qualley character, the Honey character, is probably the one who really does the fast-talking. And as you said, Qualley probably really worked hard on getting that Bacall voice in there. The other characters the funny thing is, the other characters in Honey Don't are kind of dumb. Whereas it seems like everybody in The Big Sleep is pretty sharp, whereas there's just a lot of stupidity in Honey Don't. Boy, maybe that's all you need to do for a synthesis right there. Smart versus dumb.
Smart versus stupid. I mean, so they're both noirs. They both have a similar kind of world-weary view of the world and of life. They both have these kind of LGBTQ themes, I think, although in The Big Sleep it's underplayed. Yeah. But I still think that there are some sort of LGBTQ undercurrents there. I think they're both about decay. At least, like the story world is a world of decay. I think Bakersfield, looks sort of bleached and washed out, and like a city in decline in Honey Don't. And I think my understanding is that the Los Angeles of 1944 in The Big Sleep is also considered by its residents to be a city in decline. That actually, the glory days were past Los Angeles by then, and that people felt that that things were on the slide. That places like the casino where Eddie Mars makes all his money used to be somebody's grand estate, and now it's been kind of turned into this sort of den of vice. Yep. I think this notion of urban decay, I think, is pretty close to the surface in both of them. Yeah, and also this is the other thing. I think both films are sort of about loss, really. I think loss feels like the primary theme of The Big Sleep, that it's all about, the film is dominated by this guy who never appears because he's dead before the story even begins. Yeah. But people are constantly talking about Reagan. I should have figured out what pronunciation I was going to stick with before starting recording.
Yeah, Sean Reagan.
Reagan, maybe. But everybody's talking about him. Everybody wants to know where he is. This is who the general is kind of missing. This is sort of who the general wants Marlowe to find, even though everybody insists, I never asked you to find him. That's not the brief. Yeah. That's not the job. I don't go looking for him. And at the end of the film, he kind of finds out what happened to him, even though he doesn't find the body or produce him alive. Mm-hmm. And the same with Honey Don't. It's sort of about loss broadly, insofar as the loss of a lover because it turns out they've become a killer and they're just not really a suitable romantic partner anymore. The loss of the niece and searching for her, isn't it? It's all the characters in these films are characters with holes in their lives, and that's sort of one of those fundamental noirish themes, isn't it? About people who are mourning, people who are sort of lost, people who are grieving, or people who are kind of cynical and world weary and disillusioned, I think. So they slot together nicely. One of them is a serious thriller with some great comedy. Mm-hmm. One of them is a comedy that's not funny, that fails to function as a thriller. Yeah. So I suppose they're kind of inverted versions of each other from that point of view as well. Yeah, agreed. I think they also share these two qualities. One, I think they both have too many characters.
I think they would both be better told stories if it was simplified or clarified or more focused. Neither film is terribly focused, I don't think. Then also I think they're each kind of the wrong length. I think you could, take 15 minutes off of The Big Sleep. And if you put 15 minutes, that might be 30%, as we were talking before, of that into the Honey Don't, or at least told that story more clearly and more interestingly. I think you've got good films. They're both good hour 45-minute films, or maybe great. They could be great hour 45-minute films, but at 128 and 156 or 158, they're a little long or a little short.
Yep. 105 minutes. That is the correct length of a feature film. I guess. Yep. And
then I think I think you've already made this point beautifully. They're both super sexually charged, but one of them is really just gratuitous and on the nose, and the other one is just fantastically subtle. And there's something extra seductive, I think, about people who express their sexuality in clever language. The whole horse racing thing is on the nose, but it's so clever between Bogart and Bacall. I think when you it's hard to make dialogue super sexy, but it's accomplished in The Big Sleep. And then everything that happens in Honey Don't is stuff that you don't want to be sitting in front of your in-laws while you're watching it. Some memories that will just never be erased.
That's what they should put on the poster, isn't it? Don't take your in-laws.
Honey, don't take your in-laws to see this film. Your octogenarian.
That's it. Honey, don't take your in-laws. Right, we have just got enough time to talk about what else has been playing at this theatre.
You must go first. I took the Bogart thing away from you, so...
Something a bit different from our house this week, because what's been playing at my theatre is a video game.
Oh.
So we've played Split Fiction over the last 2 or 3 weeks, which is it's a 2-player game on the PlayStation, which you can only play it with 2 people.
Oh,
you
nice.
cannot play it on your own. It must be 2 people sitting side by side playing each character. So Edward and I sat and played that over a few nights last couple of weeks. So it's a narrative game, story about 2 women. So this rings a bell. 2 women who are commercially unsuccessful writers. And so they accept a publishing contract with this big company without realizing that the contract they've signed basically involves being put inside a machine that drains all of their ideas out of their heads and copyrights them. So it's kind of like a commentary on ChatGPT, basically. And like the guy who runs this company, he's a megalomaniac, saying, "That's it. We're going to corner the market in all of fiction because I'm just going to drain all of the ideas and then out of these writers' heads, and then we will just recombine them in a million different ways forever." And so one of these characters writes high fantasy about dragons and castles, and one of them writes kind of like cyberpunk science fiction with sort of robot ninjas. And there's an accident, which means they both get put into the same machine. So they get trapped in each other's fantasy worlds together. And basically it's a blast. It's absolutely bursting with ideas, and you're hopping backwards and forwards between sort of cyberpunk and high fantasy. Every few minutes there's something new. I was kind of cackling with joy at slipping between these 2 genres backwards and forwards. It's great fun. Some of the writing is a bit on the nose, but it does try to explore some deeply felt emotional themes. 2 women protagonists, that alone is a little bit unusual these days. And they are fairly normal people. I mean, it's trying to be thoughtful. It's a lot of good fun, and it doesn't outstay its welcome. I think it took us 13 hours to play it from start to finish. That's about the time it would take to watch one season of a TV show, something like that. Yeah. And it had at least as many ideas as a season of a very good TV show. Great fun. Wow. So I would recommend, dear listener, if you have a PlayStation and a friend, I would recommend it. Good fun.
Oh boy, it's easier to have the PlayStation than the friend. You got to find a friend. You can't buy that. That's wild. That sounds very smart for video gaming.
Yeah, it is pretty smart
and very human. Yes. Very human somehow. That's great.
So interesting things to say. What's been playing at your theatre this week?
I saw a couple things. Jaws is being revived, I guess, because it's
fantastic.
I think it's the 50th year anniversary. So there was an outdoor screening in the neighborhood, and I was going out to buy some beer, but then I just thought I'd swing by because I didn't have the time to see the whole film. But I ended up watching probably 15 or 20 minutes, but it was not the, I never saw the shark. I saw a shark. So the 15 or 20 minutes I saw was just some character building scenes, some setting up of the story, and it's so good. I mean, it felt like that film made today by a different director would have been all action, huge camera moves and all that. But it's amazing how much he goes into the characters and just lets them talk and work scenes out. And I was really impressed. It's been a long time since I've seen that film, and as I said, I didn't see the whole film. I saw just a little bit, and I didn't see any of the super action parts. But I was just impressed on like how patient he was making that film. Like not a lot of, as I said, not a lot of camera movement. It's in the days of kind of just choosing where the camera goes and leaving it there, and then let the actors move around and letting things happen. Like 2-minute long scenes, 3-minute long scenes. And it was really great because it was really the scenes where the Roy Scheider character Brody and Richard Dreyfuss's character kind of meet each other and their friendship develops. So it was just that sequence, and I was really impressed with just how like thoughtful filmmaking it was, as opposed to just in your face with lots and lots of cuts and a lot of camera movement and bells and whistles, as opposed to just letting the story be told. So I was really impressed with that. It was just interesting to go back and see a random sequence of that film.
Do you imagine if that film was released today, would it be a blockbuster? Would people be queuing around the block? Would it be an international phenomenon?
Nope.
Probably it wouldn't, I guess.
Nope. I think it'd be probably be reviewed as boring. Peter Bradshaw would say something really interesting about that one too.
Oh my God.
And I think it's just our attention spans have just changed. Like I think the entire culture is right now based on buying people's attention and advertising to them all that. And you'd be if you sold a person like one friendship or one idea in a scene, that's a failure in today's market, where you have to have some brash behavior. You can have maybe an explosion will help a little bit. You need stuff to happen, and it's surprising in Jaws how thoughtful good parts of the film are. So. That was enlightening. I also saw a film called Suleiman's Story, which is a French film about an immigrant from Guinea who is like a Uber Eats kind of bicycle courier driver, deliverer in Paris, and he's trying to get his asylum. And boy, most of this film I thought was fantastic. Very perilous because he's riding the streets of Paris, trying to speed around on his bicycle, and he's going to get hit at some point, but it could have been 20 times or it could have been just 3 or 4 times. But every scene you feel like you're in danger and he's in danger. It was really great, and he's sort of buying this story that. Is almost sold to him by someone who already has asylum and guides people through the process. And he's sort of memorizing the story the whole time. And it ends very poorly, though, because it takes us back to where he's been practicing this story, takes us back, and then we sort of get the whole film again in a nutshell because he's in this interview. So it's had all these exciting sequences that are just him moving around Paris and showing you the immigrant life, and he's sheltered in these terrible places and just trying to survive and send money home and contact his family and all that. And then all of a sudden he's sitting down for an interview, and it sort of ends there with probably an 8 or a 10-minute sequence where he's going through the process. And it doesn't play out exactly as we thought, but it has a very ambiguous ending, which could have worked, but I felt like I saw the film and then I heard the film, or the reason for the film to be made, explained in this fairly pedestrian, like one-on-one interview in an office cubicle. So it was just it let me down quite a bit at the end, but I think like 95% of the film was really good. So Suleiman's Story, I would recommend it, but be prepared for a soft ending, I guess.
leave before the end.
Yeah.
A little bit like most of the audience of Honey Don't. Okay.
Yes.
On Instagram, we are at 2 Real Cinema Club. Read the blog. 2realcinemaclub.com, comment on the YouTube channel, or email us to realcinemaclub@gmail.com. Next time around, we're going to be growing our hair, I guess. Are we?
Or putting on some sort of wig that gives us longer hair. Better than vampire teeth or any of the other things, clown outfits we've been wearing lately. Boy, I am stoked. Spinal Tap and Spinal Tap 2, I think it's the 41st anniversary year of Spinal Tap. They've gone ahead and done Spinal Tap 2. Trailer looks great. I have high hopes, so maybe that's bad. But I think it's going to be good. I think we're going to have a good laugh. We're going to bring joy back to the podcast.
A comedy that might actually be funny. I can't wait. 2 doses of Spinal Tap. Next time we will be sniffing the glove. Until then, thank you for joining us. Be careful what you take your parents-in-law to. And we will see you next time.
Goodbye, everyone.